When we think about Europeans, the first thing that comes to our mind is white people with brown hair, and a rich society that is ahead of the rest of the world in technology. But in some countries or some particular people there, they think that the root of all the problems in the world are only the Europeans and Americans. Now I am talking about how true this is. That is a separate issue of debate. But in today's video, you hear are some such countries which hate Europeans or do not allow them entry. While European travelers typically have access to many countries, certain nations restrict or complicate entry for travelers based on political tensions, diplomatic disputes, or specific travel bans. However, these restrictions can be subject to change, especially due to evolving international relations. So in today's video, we are going to show you 10 countries where Europeans not allowed. But before starting the video, I want to request you, we put our best efforts to create our every single video. So please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Let's start. Number 10, Belarus. Belarus, officially the Republic of Belarus, is a landlocked country in Eastern Europe. It is bordered by Russia to the east and northeast, Ukraine to the south, Poland to the west. As of 2023, the population of Belarus is estimated to be 9.15 million people. Belarus doesn't exactly hate Europeans, but there has been considerable tension between Belarus and several European countries, especially in recent years. This tension is largely rooted in political, diplomatic, and ideological differences between Belarus's government, led by President Alexander Lukashenko, and many European Union nations. Belarus under Lukashenko has been described as one of Europe's last authoritarian regimes, where political freedoms, press independence, and democratic practices are limited. Many European countries advocate for democracy, human rights, and free elections, leading to friction with Belarus's government, which views external pressures for reform as interference. In 2020, Belarus held a highly contested presidential election in which Lukashenko claimed victory. However, there were widespread accusations of election fraud, sparking mass protests in Belarus. The EU and other Western countries did not recognize the election results as legitimate, and they imposed sanctions on Belarusian officials, including Lukashenko. Belarus saw this as an affront to its sovereignty and further distanced itself from European nations. Belarus is a close ally of Russia, while many European countries have had strained relations with Russia in recent years, especially over issues like the annexation of Crimea, the conflict in Ukraine, and cybersecurity concerns. Belarus and Russia's close ties have positioned Belarus more firmly in opposition to the EU's stance on many issues. The Belarusian government's response to the post-election protests was harsh, with widespread reports of police brutality, detentions, and human rights abuses. European countries have condemned these actions, leading to increased tensions and more sanctions. Belarus's government views these criticisms as hostile and has reacted by limiting European influence within its borders. Number 9, Somalia. Do you know that Somalia has the longest coastline in Africa, spanning 3,333 kilometers along the Indian Ocean? The country is also home to some of the most beautiful beaches on Earth. The population of Somalia is estimated to be around 18.1 million people. Somalia was colonized by European powers in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, with different regions controlled by the British, Italians, and the French. The divisions imposed by colonial borders often disregarded Somali clan territories and cultural ties, leading to lasting social and political fragmentation. As in many former colonies, memories of exploitation, oppression, and division contribute to mistrust and resentment towards European powers. In recent decades, various Western countries have been involved in military interventions in Somalia, often under the guise of countering terrorism or stabilizing the region. The most notable example was the US-led Operation Restore Hope in the early 1990s, which saw significant loss of life and was marked by the infamous Black Hawk Down incident. While these interventions were ostensibly aimed at restoring stability, they are often viewed by Somalis as foreign interference that has done little to improve their situation. Some European nations provide support to countries neighboring Somalia, such as Ethiopia and Kenya, which have complex and sometimes contentious relationships with Somalia. These countries have their own interests in Somali territory and politics, and Somali citizens may view Western support for them as indirectly harmful to Somalia's sovereignty and stability. Somalia's location along the Horn of Africa makes it strategically significant, especially for maritime routes and access to resources. Some Somalis feel that Western countries are more interested in exploiting Somalia's natural resources, such as fishing rights and potential oil reserves, than in helping the country develop sustainably. Cases of illegal fishing and toxic waste dumping by foreign entities have added to these grievances, leading to frustration over perceived exploitation. While European countries are among the biggest providers of humanitarian aid to Somalia, there's often criticism that this aid comes with conditions or aligns with Western priorities. Some Somali leaders and citizens feel that while aid is necessary, it perpetuates a cycle of dependency and doesn't address the root causes of Somalia's issues. This can lead to resentment toward foreign entities who seem to hold influence over Somalia's future. Number 8. Sudan. Sudan is both an African and Arab country, with Arabic being the most widely spoken language. Over 97% of the population are Sunni Muslims with a small Christian minority. As of 2023, the population of Sudan is estimated to be around 46.7 million people. Sudan's relationship with European countries is complex and has been influenced by a history of colonialism, political intervention, sanctions, and cultural differences. This has led to occasional resentment, mistrust, and tension, particularly between Sudan's government and some European powers. Sudan was under British and Egyptian rule from the late 19th century until its independence in 1956. British colonial policies often neglected Sudan's cultural diversity, and the forced unification of different regions created tensions that have persisted long after independence. Many Sudanese associate colonial rule with economic exploitation, suppression of local traditions, and the imposition of foreign governance, which has left lingering anti-colonial sentiment toward Western countries, including European nations. For decades, Sudan has faced economic sanctions from Western countries, including those in Europe, particularly in response to the Darfur conflict and alleged human rights abuses. These sanctions have contributed to economic hardship, limited trade opportunities, and restricted access to resources, which some Sudanese people see as Western interference. Although the EU and other Western powers see sanctions as a tool to encourage human rights and democracy, they are often perceived within Sudan as punishing the general population rather than achieving meaningful change. Sudan is a predominantly Muslim country with a strong cultural identity, and there is often a perception that Western countries, including those in Europe, do not fully respect Sudanese values and religious practices. Tensions occasionally arise over cultural misunderstandings, especially on topics like women's rights, freedom of expression, and governance. Some Sudanese people feel that Western perspectives are imposed without regard for Sudan's distinct culture and social norms. Number 7. Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia does not hate Europeans, but there are areas of political, cultural, and ideological tension between Saudi Arabia and some European countries. These tensions arise from differences in governance, religious values, and international policies. Saudi Arabia is an absolute monarchy governed by Islamic law, while most European countries are democracies with a strong emphasis on human rights, freedom of speech, and gender equality. European countries often criticize Saudi Arabia's treatment of dissidents, human rights defenders, and women's rights. This criticism is often seen by Saudi Arabia as interference in its internal affairs, fueling resentment and suspicion toward European intentions. Saudi Arabia's foreign policy often aligns with the interests of its allies in the Middle East, such as the United Arab Emirates and Egypt, and is sometimes at odds with European approaches, especially regarding Iran. For example, Europe has often advocated for diplomatic engagement with Iran, while Saudi Arabia views Iran as a regional rival and has been critical of Europe's stance. These differing approaches create tension, as Saudi Arabia may view Europe's policies as underestimating or even disregarding its security concerns. The topic of Muslim immigrants and Islamic cultural integration is often a sensitive issue in Europe. Incidents of Islamophobia and anti-Muslim sentiment in some European countries can contribute to resentment, as many Saudis view these issues as showing a lack of tolerance and respect for Islam. Additionally, Saudi Arabia sometimes expresses solidarity with Muslim communities in Europe and sees some European policies and rhetoric on immigration as discriminatory. Number 6. Iran. Iran is a major regional power, due to its large reserves of fossil fuels, including the world's second-largest natural gas supply, third-largest proven oil reserves, its geopolitically significant location, military capabilities, cultural hegemony, regional influence, and role as the world's focal point of Shia Islam. Iran's population is estimated to be around 85.3 million people in 2023. Throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, European powers, particularly Britain and Russia, exerted significant influence over Iran, controlling its resources and interfering in its internal affairs. Many Iranians remember this period as one of exploitation and manipulation, particularly with regards to Iran's oil resources and territorial integrity. This legacy has created lingering mistrust of Western countries, including Europe. The overthrow of the Shah and the establishment of the Islamic Republic in 1979 marked a rejection of Western influence in Iran. The new government adopted an anti-Western stance, and the slogan "Neither East nor West" became a core part of Iran's foreign policy, rejecting both Western capitalism and Soviet communism. As a result, relations with many Western countries, including Europe, became strained, especially as Iran framed itself as resisting what it saw as Western imperialism and influence. Iranian officials and citizens often feel that Western media, including European outlets, portray Iran in a negative light, focusing on controversial aspects of its politics and society while ignoring the country's achievements and the perspectives of ordinary Iranians. This perceived bias can lead to resentment and a sense that Europe does not fully respect or understand Iran. From Iran's perspective, its regional alliances are a matter of security, especially given its isolation due to sanctions and Western alliances with its rivals, such as Saudi Arabia and Israel. European criticism of Iran's regional actions is seen by Iran as part of a broader effort to curb its influence. Number 5. Yemen. Yemen is known for many things, including its culture, natural resources, and cities. The population of Yemen in 2023 was 34 million people. There are historical, political, and economic reasons why there might be resentment or mistrust between Yemen and certain European countries. These tensions are largely related to Yemen's colonial history, foreign interventions, and the current humanitarian crisis exacerbated by foreign involvement. Parts of Yemen were colonized by the British, with Aden a major port city controlled by Britain from the mid-19th century until 1967. British colonial rule and its division of Yemen into the north and south, with North Yemen independent and South Yemen under British control, left a legacy of economic and social inequality. This history contributes to a lingering suspicion of European intentions and a sense of resentment toward Western powers. The ongoing civil war in Yemen involves multiple foreign actors, including a Saudi-led coalition that has received support, directly or indirectly, from European countries. European arms sales to Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates have been heavily criticized because these weapons are used in Yemen, where they have reportedly contributed to civilian casualties and infrastructure destruction. Many Yemenis view this foreign support as exacerbating their suffering and feel that European countries prioritize profits from arms sales over the humanitarian crisis in Yemen. Many Yemenis feel that European countries, along with the U.S. and regional powers, have meddled in Yemen's internal affairs for their own strategic interests. For instance, European and American support for certain regional players like Saudi Arabia and the UAE is often seen as an endorsement of foreign influence over Yemen's sovereignty. This external interference is viewed as a continuation of a pattern where foreign powers prioritize their interests over Yemen's stability and independence. Number 4. Afghanistan. Afghanistan is known for making beautiful oriental rugs. The Afghan carpet has certain prints that make them unique to Afghanistan. Afghanistan is known for its production of Afghan rugs, traditionally handwoven using a number of well-known and highly prized patterns. According to the World Population Review, as of 2023, Afghanistan's population is 44 million. Although Afghanistan was never formally colonized, it was a focal point for British and Russian influence in the 19th and 20th centuries, known as the Great Game. The British Empire attempted to control Afghanistan as a buffer state against Russian expansion, leading to a series of costly Anglo-Afghan wars. The legacies of these conflicts and the resulting internal divisions contribute to lingering mistrust toward foreign involvement, especially from Western powers, including some European nations. European countries, especially as part of NATO, played significant roles during and after the Soviet invasion in the 1980s and later the US-led intervention in 2001. Many Afghans were initially supportive of efforts to oust the Taliban, but over time, frustration grew as NATO forces struggled to bring security and stability. Some Afghans view European involvement as part of a broader pattern of foreign powers entering the country for their own strategic purposes without delivering on promises to improve life for ordinary people. European forces in Afghanistan have, at times, been involved in incidents that caused civilian casualties, often during combat operations against the Taliban. These tragedies have left lasting wounds, especially in communities directly affected by the loss of innocent lives. For some Afghans, these incidents contribute to a perception that European forces were not always sensitive to the realities on the ground, creating resentment toward foreign military presence. Incidents of Islamophobia in some European countries and restrictions on Islamic practices are concerning to many Afghans, who feel solidarity with Muslim communities worldwide. This sentiment can lead to frustration and alienation, as some Afghans feel that Europe does not respect their religion or the rights of Muslims. Number 3. Libya. The country is known for its culture and history and contains some of the world's most well-preserved ruins from ancient civilizations. Libya has two major climate systems. In the south, the climate is hot and dry, characteristic of Sahara Desert. However, in the north, the Mediterranean Sea creates a milder climate. The total population in Libya was estimated at 6.9 million people in 2023. Libya's relationship with European countries is complex and shaped by a variety of historical, political, and social factors. While it would be an oversimplification to say that Libya hates Europeans, there are several reasons for significant resentment and mistrust among many Libyans toward European nations. Libya was under Italian colonial rule from 1911 to 1943, during which time the Italian government implemented harsh policies, including violent repression and forced assimilation. This history of colonial oppression has left deep scars, and the memory of Italian colonialism contributes to a lingering distrust of European powers. The NATO-led intervention in Libya in 2011, which helped overthrow Gaddafi, is viewed with mixed feelings. While some Libyans welcomed the intervention, others believe that it led to the country's subsequent instability and chaos. The intervention did not provide the stability and governance that many had hoped for, and the power vacuum it created has fueled ongoing conflict. Some Libyans feel that European countries abandoned them after the initial intervention, leading to resentment over their involvement. Since the fall of Gaddafi, Libya has experienced ongoing violence and civil conflict among various factions vying for power. Many Libyans blame foreign intervention, including that of European countries. Number 2. Syria. The relationship between Syria and European countries is multifaceted and shaped by a history of colonialism, political conflicts, and geopolitical interests. While it is not accurate to say that Syria as a whole hates Europeans, there are several reasons for significant resentment and distrust among many Syrians toward European nations. As of 2023, the population of Syria is estimated to be 23.5 million people. Syria was part of the Ottoman Empire for centuries before being placed under French mandate following World War I. The French colonial administration implemented policies that many Syrians viewed as oppressive, including efforts to suppress local culture and identity. This colonial history has left a legacy of mistrust toward Western powers, including European countries. The Western military interventions in the Middle East, particularly in Iraq and Libya, have led to widespread skepticism among Syrians regarding foreign intentions. Many believe that these interventions have destabilized the region and contributed to the rise of extremist groups, leading to further conflict. This historical context fuels suspicion toward European involvement in the Syrian crisis. Many Syrians view European countries as applying double standards in their foreign policies. While European governments have criticized the Assad regime for its brutal crackdown on protests and dissent, they have also engaged in business dealings and maintained diplomatic relations. This perceived hypocrisy fuels mistrust and resentment. The belief that Western countries, including European nations, have historically intervened in Middle Eastern politics for their own strategic interests is widespread among Syrians. Many view these interventions as attempts to exert control over the region rather than genuine support for democracy or human rights. This perception fosters skepticism about the motives behind European actions. Number 1. North Korea. North Korea is a totalitarian dictatorship with a comprehensive cult of personality around the Kim family. Amnesty International considers the country to have the worst human rights record in the world. The population of North Korea is estimated to be around 26.07 million in 2023. This is roughly half the population of South Korea, which is estimated to be around 51.75 million in 2024. I think there is no need to tell me much about North Korea because you yourself are intelligent. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.